Two, one. All right, joining us for episode 32, beginning of this, Joey Wagner at Mr. Wagner25 on Twitter, covers Illini men's basketball and football for Herald and Review. Joey, how are you?
I'm doing good. It's a busy time of the year. We're getting back to kind of getting into full swing of things, but everything's good. How are you guys?
Good. All right, let's start here. What is going on? We are a basketball podcast, but I just want to ask this real quick. What is going on with the Illini football team in terms of their status right now in terms of COVID and all that?
It looks like they're playing. I mean, I haven't heard anything otherwise. Lovie Smith said they were clean on Wednesday. That's the last official update we've gotten. And I will be curious what things look like. And this is really every week, right? What things look like in terms of actives and inactives a little bit before game time.
Interesting. All right, Tyler, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just doing some things, looking through your Twitter, and your pinned tweet is you taking a 5.2-mile walk with Brad Underwood, and I don't know if you knew you were going on this walk, but I saw you were wearing a polo going on this walk. But you've been around Underwood physically; he seems to be in better shape, and I just wanted to know how he was doing. Have you talked to him any other than that? And what he's thinking about the team and what's going on with scheduling, things like that.
We've talked to him, I think, one other time since then. I knew I was going on it. I mean, it was my intention,
Okay.
But I also knew we had a photographer going, and it's like I thought about that before I left. I'm like, I don't really know how to dress for this.
Yeah.
Like, I know there's going to be a picture in the newspaper, so I'm definitely not trying to.
I told Ethan, I'm like, he's wearing a polo and some cargo shorts. That doesn't look very comfortable for 5.2
Oh, it
miles.
wasn't. It wasn't even at all. No, it wasn't the best decision I could have made, but I didn't really put as much thought into it as I should have. Just I knew we had a photographer, but man, it's it's really, for this program, it's been a long way to get to this point. I mean, it was not pretty that first year that Brad was there with a roster that wasn't his. I mean, he filled some scholarships. And now, to be fair, he hit on some gems, right? He hit on, he kept Trent Frazier, DeMonte Williams. Those guys have become crucial into what they're doing.
Instrumental, absolutely.
But, I mean, even that second year, the most loss in program history, and it's like, oh my gosh, what is going on here? And Io comes back, and you get Kofi, and suddenly, I mean, really, to be fair, even that second year when Io was a freshman, you could see some signs, right? I mean, the Michigan State game, if I'm remembering correctly with my years, they went to Ohio State and won. And you're like, well, this is something. I mean, this is definitely something. And last year was obviously the breakthrough, cut off way too short. But this every program goes at it differently. What Brad wanted to do and what he's done is establish this culture. He's talked about it at length. He knows he's talked about it at length. He should. It was a great deal of what he was doing. But I think there's so much pride, and not only from him, but from the players, to get to this point and to understand what the road was like to get here. And like Brad said when we were walking, we haven't done anything yet. I mean, they really haven't, right? They came close to winning the Big Ten regular season last year. They were down to the final week. That's a good accomplishment, something great to put under your belt as you're putting this forward. But the tournament was canceled. They couldn't really show. I mean, they thought they were red hot going into that thing, and they had a deep run planned. That didn't happen. So, I mean, it's not like this program is like, oh my gosh, let's pencil them in for everything for the foreseeable future. But there is an appreciation of where it was and how this season was kind of built.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, like you said, they haven't proved anything yet. And I know that Underwood has kind of been pushing that to let people, I know there's a big fire burning, but we got to pump the brakes a little bit. So, you like to hear that from a leader too, not to get ahead of where we need to be. Also, you had a nice little article about DeMonte. You've kind of mentioned him there. Have you been to any practices? I don't know what they're allowing now. Have you seen his game lately? I know that towards the end of the season last year, his shot was looking better. He seemed more confident. Have you seen anything about him being maybe more of a scorer than just a defensive presence?
We've been locked out. I mean,
Sure.
like a launch code to get into other.
I wondered. Yep. I kind of
But
figured that was.
I mean, you nailed it though. He was probably, frankly, in those last 3 or 4 games last year, their best 3-point shooting threat. I mean, he was knocking them down. And before I came to Decatur, I was in Pekin, and I jumped on board, I guess, to cover their state when DeMonte was at Peoria Manual. His junior year, they went to state, and I thought, well, we don't really have anything else going. It's a half hour away. I'll go check it out and head over there. And I mean, DeMonte in high school was just a different level. And I understand the gap between the high school and the Big Ten, but the guy could score. I mean, it's not like he has always been this defensive guy who just struggles to score the ball. He could really score. And he's had just a really interesting journey too. Remember, he was coming off as a freshman, that ACL injury.
Yeah, absolutely.
Figuring his way back. And I mean, to his credit, you look at, they talk about roles, and, the roles seem to be understood last year, excuse me. And now it's like, well, I mean, if that's DeMonte's role, there's obviously enough firepower around him, but there's no doubt if he can get scoring, it's just another dimension. I don't think it's an added. I think it's just another issue for teams.
And it's not like Illinois doesn't have other scorers, even if that is what he does. But it was so nice having him towards the end of the season last year, where defenses had to worry about him more. And so I think if he can build on that and keep that going, that would be great for the team. You also had a little thing about him and Adam Miller have gotten pretty close. Is this just kind of DeMonte's personality? Does he get real close with everybody? I mean, he just seems like one of those guys that everybody wants to be friends with. John Rothstein just put out that he was in his top 10 glue guys. And I think that's huge to have guys like that. We had Andre Felice, who kind of was in that role last year. And is this just how DeMonte is with everybody, or is his and Adam Miller's a little bit different than the rest of the teams?
Well, DeMonte, it's probably hard for people to understand. I don't think doing media is DeMonte's thing. He does it, but I just don't know that that's. So it's kind of hard to display his personality, for us to display his personality, because it's just not really, and that's fine. There's guys who enjoy it. It's fine. But DeMonte, if you look around, if you're watching before a game, if you're there, which I don't know what that's going to look like this year,
right?
He is always laughing. He's cracking jokes.
Right. He always seems like that guy, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, everybody knows Georgie to be that, right? We all see him doing Georgie things. But
and he does it in the public more, in interviews and stuff. Like you said, DeMonte doesn't do that so much. So
right, but he's definitely that type. But the thing with DeMonte and Adam is they were both in Peoria together. So before Adam went to Morgan Park, he was at Peoria Manual. Okay. So the year DeMonte went to state as a junior, I got back and I heard, man, there's this 8th grader and those kids are all juniors. And now you bring in this kid next year, this Adam Miller kid who's going to be a freshman. And oh my gosh, how does Manual not repeat? And you're like, well, that adds up. I mean, that's a really good team. And you put it, who we're told is a star out, in there, and it's going to be something else. So obviously DeMonte gets hurt his senior year. Adam plays 1 year at Manual and goes to Morgan Park in Chicago. But those guys grew up together. I mean, they're close. I mean, they have been close for a long time. They remained close. It sounds like when Adam was in Chicago, DeMonte was in Champaign. They train with David Williams in the offseason. He's got in Havana. I mean, Havana is just the smallest town you could even imagine. But there's this little gym there, and they go in there and they work. David Williams, I believe he was a high school assistant coach at some point, if he's not still. And those guys really crafted that together with each other. And I mean, it's a really strong bond. So while DeMonte does have that with what it looks to me like everybody, I mean, everybody's laughing with DeMonte every time I look up.
Sure.
Him and Adam go back quite a ways.
Okay. All right. That makes more sense. You think that DeMonte played a big role in Adam Miller wanting to stay here then?
We asked about that. I mean, I will say when Adam was on as official, DeMonte was, they came to a football game, if I'm remembering correctly, and DeMonte was there. I mean, and some of that could have just been like, hey, this has been my friend for 10 years.
Sure.
And I want him to be around. So, I mean, I don't know that it hurt, and I certainly can't imagine that it hurt, right? But I don't know
Right.
exactly how much DeMonte put his foot on the gas, and maybe we'll never know. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
I can't imagine it hurt.
And I mean, he's been in that position. You don't want to be the guy forcing somebody to come because you're there, or things like that. You got to let the process work how it does. So, but you also had another really good article about Coach Underwood and being able to spend more time with Tyler during all this pandemic lockdown stuff. And I saw in there Tyler definitely wants to get into coaching, and he did announce that he's going to come back for his 6th year this year. Kind of seems like as of right now, he is kind of like another coach on the bench, kind of how he helped with the defense last year and, the plays like that. Do you see Tyler coming back to work with his dad? Do you see him moving on to somewhere else? Do you have any insight into that by chance?
I don't know exactly what that's going to look like, but I would think at some point you got to, if you're Brad, maybe you're hoping you let your kid fly a little bit,
Sure,
right?
absolutely.
And Tyler has a lot of input at practice, Brad said. I mean, Tyler will come up and say, hey, and to be fair, it sounds like there's a lot of open dialogue at practice. I wouldn't just say, well, if Tyler wants to do it, he can do it. That's not the case. But, there's a dialogue where Tyler will say, hey, what if we try this?
Yeah.
Or what if we try this to counter this? And he's a smart kid. And sometimes Brad's just like, no, dude, that's not
right. Yeah.
and you just move on.
Yeah, has to step in and yep.
But I think the more, and Brad has learned from so many people too. Remember, he's worked under Frank Martin and him and Bob Huggins are close. And there's so many different people Brad's learned from. I think he knows the value of, if there's an opportunity for Tyler to be a GA somewhere or to, get a chance to learn from different people and continuously, kind of update his lexicon here. I think that's something they'd be interested in. And to be truthful, that may have already been the case this year had it not been for a once in a century pandemic. And there just frankly weren't a lot of coaching moves around.
Yeah.
And it's expensive to do that. And expenses are not the thing in college athletics right now.
Right.
So I think that would have been the case. But you look at those two, I was just enamored by it when Brad and I were talking because recruiting doesn't stop. Brad's on the road. Brad's coaching. He's practicing. I mean, it's just go, go, go. And then all of a sudden that going stops and you're at home and suddenly your college son who has friends, he's got his own life. He's a basketball player. Well, I mean, you're asked to stay away from people and to have that time together with each other in, quarantine, basically, that really hasn't happened for a while, I don't think. And Tyler touched on it last year for senior day and, kind of talked about the journey with Brad to get here and what it was like growing up, the son of a basketball coach. And there's obviously not a lot of people in this country who know what that's like, right? I mean, there's a child of a basketball coach even. So
it's definitely not at that level. I mean,
right. So it's, I just thought it was cool that they had that chance when literally everything around has just not been good for 7 months. And for them to have that opportunity, I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, sounds awesome. Just got a couple more things. My buddy, Ethan, the other guy that's on here with us, he's dying for a schedule to come out. Do you think we'll see a schedule anytime soon?
I mean, I keep thinking, I keep wondering that. I mean, obviously the Duke game, that was big news, and they announced that, which was
and they announced the date too, which I mean surprised me because there was talk of like league restrict, like only playing in your league. And so maybe that's out the door now that they're scheduling these other things, or maybe they'll revert back to that. I mean, everything seems to be up in the air right now.
It's a mess, right? I mean, and remember, there's still a report out there that they're going to host a multi-team event.
Right.
So that's 3 more games. So now you're at 4, and if there's 27 games going, if the Big Ten's still 20, you got 3 to mess with. I mean, I keep looking down at the calendar. I'm like, okay, well, we're less than a month away here. At some point,
they got to be telling us something, right? Yeah,
know what's going on. So I mean, you would think in the next few weeks, but I don't know how.
Nobody really knows, right? Okay, all right. That's kind of what I was wondering if
everyone's
if you had any clue. But
as we piece it together, there are ways where you can look at it and say, okay, well, we're kind of running out of open dates here, right?
Sure.
If the Big Ten is in fact 20 games, which again, that's not particularly clear. So it's I don't really envy anybody trying to piece this thing together, and certainly us as we try to follow this.
Last thing, I know we're Illini basketball podcast, but we do live in the state of Illinois. IHSA just announced 2 days ago that they are moving forward with a basketball season. Pritzker is against it, wanting to move it to spring. Do you see high school basketball being played in Illinois this winter?
Oh man.
I saw you just posted that Decatur Public Schools aren't going to have it. I mean, pretty
as long
much.
as they're doing virtual
Right.
learning, that they won't.
I assume that 186 here in Springfield, they're all virtual, so they're not going to do it. I saw Chicago Public said they're not going to do it. They kind of put the pressure. It seemed like IHSA took the pressure off themselves and put it on all these schools and these school boards to say, hey, we're going to offer it, but it's on you now. So
yeah, that's exactly it. And the day after that happens, or maybe the day of, every day's a blur at this point. But Pritzker at his press conference used the word liability, and I think right there that sent up alarms and every.
Yep. Yeah, and my brother, he's an AD at a school. Just became the girls' basketball coach, so he's wants it, but he's worried that the liability, as they say, is going to be the problem. So
there's so many layers between that and the State Board of Education is citing with the Illinois Department of Public Health and the governor's office. So there's so many different layers, and I'm wondering we're watching basically a fight play out publicly here, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's effectively what we've really boiled this thing down to. And is someone going to blink? I mean, we're kind of running out of time here for that to happen.
Right.
So at some point, either one of these two entities have to say, you know what, we'll go with your side, or the school boards have a big decision to make here in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah,
if this is going to happen. I mean,
and they've been making big decision after big decision throughout this all. So it's just another thing to put on all these small towns that are feeling pressure from parents anyways to get in school, and so best of luck to them, I guess. Class. I saw that Jeremy Fears Jr. is transferring to Indiana, La Lumiere. Do you see other kids doing that, or do you see more like travel programs? I've seen a lot of people say, hey, we're going to put a travel team together, go to Iowa and play.
That's exactly right. I think those are really the two options. And you got to wonder if, will there be some school districts? I mean, let's look at a county, or I guess what the buzzwords are regions, right? So if there's schools in a region that aren't, but they are, I mean, are we going to see transfers in the immediate vicinity? Are they going to be broader? Yeah. Are you going to see teams that are more border cities? As you get closer to Indiana, Iowa, Wisconsin, say, you know what, we're just going to put together a travel team, and we're going to leave every weekend, and we'll catch you later. Yeah. I think that's really probably the scariest proponent of this, if you're a fan of the IHSA and if you're a fan of all of this, because I think it's really hard to put that cat back in the bag once that road is going down.
One of my friends, we got a group message with all my buddies, and he goes, my biggest fear is the way it's going is there just won't be high school sports anymore. That sense of your school pride and all that is just going to be out the door. The farther they keep doing this, or the longer they keep doing this.
If it's moved to the spring, that's another confusing point, right?
Because football's supposed to be then, and
it's every sport. It's almost every sport. You're looking at 8 sports, 9 sports, whatever it is, playing the spring, and our kids going to have to decide. And then again, if the IHSA is not sanctioning a spring basketball season, which it clearly sounds to me like they're not, if they're playing in the winter, there's no state series on the other end of this, whether it be just a regional or just a section.
And that's why kids play, I feel, is to be a chance to be the best in the state. I mean, that's
can you get exposure elsewhere, right? I mean, do you play football? I keep coming back to I believe somebody's got to blink at some point.
Yeah,
there's got to be some sort of compromise made before we get to this point of complete and total chaos, or more complete and total chaos. But who's going to do it? And am I just wrong, or is this just going to be what it is?
Well, yeah. Moving forward, will we even have high school, sports anymore? That's the scary part, I think. But last thing, I just saw you went up to the Wisconsin game. So you got to go up and watch that the football game. And you were heading back and thought you were still in Wisconsin or something. Tried to buy some Spotted Cow. Just wanted to say, great beer choice, sir. Spotted Cow is fantastic. I'm sorry that you weren't able to get any that day.
Well, it's my own fault. I tried to put it off by leaving, and it was South Beloit is literally, I think, half in Illinois, half Wisconsin. I'm making that up. It's literally right in the.
Right.
I thought, well, it's Beloit is Wisconsin, so South Beloit must still be Wisconsin. And I didn't find any, and I certainly wasn't going to turn around on a couple hours.
Go back, yeah. Well, Joey, I really appreciate you coming on today. We're kind of trying to grow this thing that we have going on here, and having people like you with your insight coming on really helps us out. So thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to.
Hey, whatever you guys need, man. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, I appreciate it. You have a good day.
All right, y'all take care.
Thanks.